Um, my dog was very uncooperative and things were going on. And I thought, maybe we could just come to St. Patrick's. There's St. Patrick's Cathedral in Wyandotte. And then I'm going to show you guys a few things around this specific area. And if they let us in, they let us in. And if not, I'll come back and we'll read the story from in here. And there's more on another section that I think is really important. So let's go out here and let me flip the camera. So that is the Methodist Church. This is St. Patrick's in Wyandotte. It's on Superior Boulevard. Sorry about the wind. I hope you can hear me. So that goes to Bishop Park and the river's right there. It's also called Veterans Boulevard. There's 2 schools and another, which is kind of the what our town is built around. If you can see it down there, I don't know if I can zoom in. It's so windy. Anyway, there's another church down there. Let me see if I can open. It looks like it's open. On the window here says, and here it says July 1873. There's a cross, and if you can kind of see, there's a Native American and what I would assume is an Irish meeting here. There's a daycare here as well. Here's the Celtic cross. You come down through here and you can see the arches and some of the original church inside before they built this atrium around it. Which I really wish we could get inside of there. The atrium was built in this section that the atrium was built around was built in 1906. And as you can see, it's locked up tight. Hours are only Saturday and Sunday for their store. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's some interesting features, at least about the outside of the church. There's a Celtic cross right there, a cross right there, and a cross right there. When I'm standing here on Superior Boulevard, I am facing due east. It is an assumption that the sun will rise at this Veterans Memorial on the equinox. I'm going to check that out in a couple days, so I will be down here. So basically, these crosses are telling us direction. They're facing north. The church faces north. All of these, look how many there are. These crosses. And they're showing us which direction is north, which direction is east, and which direction is south. Okay, this church has similar features, as does Mount Carmel, which I can't remember the name of it. It's down the street. And Here's another church. There. It's Lutheran, I believe, and next to it is the Wyandotte Downriver Council of the Arts. There's some dogs. And that's actually the old Oddfellows building. That's the Masonic temple in town. All right. Back inside and out of the wind. And I'd like to read to you I just get this thing situated facing the church. There we go. You see it? All right. So I am going to read to you about St. Patrick being terrified of the snakes. And I'd like to also mention that if you would like more information about this, you can also check out the Celtic Druid Temple has a blog on this exact subject, and the headlines of it are interesting, and it's even more of an interesting article. And also David Morgan put out a post about the 432 hertz resonance and it being symbolic of wisdom in the way that 432 is the year of St. Patrick. So I suggest both of those things if you're interested in this. All right, so St. Patrick was from Glastonbury before he became the patron saint of Ireland, because he chased the snakes out of Ireland at a time when the symbol of the snake was the symbols pagans used to identify each other. He's never been praised as much of a snake charmer, but he certainly did wrangle them. Legend has it he stood on top of a hill, banishing the slithering serpents into the sea. After slaughtering the snakes of England, of the Emerald Isle, he went back to England to Glastonbury, where he founded a group of hermit monks that lived underground caverns at the base of the Tor. What's the kicker in this whole scenario is that St. Patrick, whose father held rank in a church, was, quote, kidnapped by Irish pirates when he was 16, who held him captive for 6 years before his escape. Afterward, he went back to Glastonbury and devoted his life to the church. There are various versions of the story where St. Patrick and a trusted companion trekked to the top of the Tor through brush and bramble to discover an oratory at the peak. I've trekked the Tor top to bottom and reread the plaque over and over, and it is intriguing. Glastonbury Tor, it reads, Glastonbury Tower rises from the lower lias clays and limestones through the middle and upper lias to a deposit of hard Midford sand on the cap, 521 feet high, known locally as Tor Bor. This more resistant to erosion than the lower layers, making the slopes steep and unstable. These steep, sculpted slopes, rising dramatically from the Isle of Avalon in the flat Somerset levels, have encouraged much speculation about the origin of the Tor in legend. The earliest reference is a mid-13th century story of St. Patrick's return from Ireland, in which he became the leader of a group of hermits in Glastonbury, and discovered an ancient ruined oratory at the summit after climbing through a dense wood. Scattered finds of prehistoric Roman and later objects suggest the Tor was always used by humans. But evidence for actual occupation from the 6th century AD was uncovered in excavations of 1964 through 1968. A second phase of occupation, between 900 and 1100, was distinguished by a head of a cross and what were probably Christian monks' cells cut into the rock on the summit. The tradition of a monastic site on the Tor is confirmed by a charter in 1265 granting permission for a flare to be, that word is illegible on the plaque, at the monastery of St. Michael there. The present Tor, though later modified, is essentially 15th century and is associated with the second of two major churches which stood on the summit. The second was probably built after the destructive earthquake of 1275. The monastic church of St. Michael's, closely associated with the great abbey in the town below, fell into ruin after the dissolution of the monasteries in 1539, when George Whiting, the last abbot of Glastonbury, was hanged on the tour. I have questions. How did St. Patrick know to stand on top of the hillside? How did he know how to drive the snakes out and into the water? And what did he learn in his time with the Druids? Was he really kidnapped? Was he a spy for the Roman establishment? Was his internment a covert occupation of the enemy to learn their ways and destroy their magic? So they decided to hang that guy there, huh? And then that was the end of it? But mostly, and this is the one I can't get over, what's up with this destructive earthquake in 1275? I have a lot of questions about that one. So we know that a lot of the footprints of churches resemble the footprints of cairns found throughout Europe, but notably in England and Ireland, and we'll focus on Ireland and England since it's St. Patrick's Day and that's our topic, and that those are set in place according to the sunrises and the sunsets of the solstices and equinoxes. And we can speculate on why those things are placed where they are. And as we look at this church standing here on both sides, right, showing you the north face, where the sun rises, where the sun sets, and on this road that is aligned with the equinoxes, you have to wonder how all these things came to be and how they came to know it. And that's why I also wanted to read for you chapter 19, which is called TRL IRL, the 3 rays of light in real life, right? And there was the chapter previously, there was a study done by a man named Mark Turler where the exact placements of the solstices and equinox were measurable, and he showed it as a scientific study by the ancients as opposed to just speculation, or maybe they tried to, like, it was a very well thought out markered metered measurement, and this is how they all align. So that's chapter 18, and so that's what the reference to is at the beginning of this chapter when I say this. So Turler was reluctant to attribute his findings to such belief structures as a modern or ancient Druidry because of modern scientific dating methods. I'm not as reluctant. Much of Turler's assessment is accurate and quite impressive, but it is lacking the understanding of the underlying structure of the societal beliefs that built these monuments and left these petroglyphs for us to find. How much more could we understand if we could incorporate the science of today with the natural philosophies of yesterday? I would venture to say that it has been identified here in what the modern Druids refer to as the 3 rays of light, TRL. Many surviving ancient belief structures incorporate a version of life force energy. The Eastern philosophies refer to this energy as chi, or prana. The Druids called this force the Nufra, kind of like the Jedi Force. Nufra is very important. They say it is the energy from the source, or Awen. What exactly is this life force energy? Is it something that can be detected, quantified, measured? Could it be something that we are already measuring? Could it be electromagnetic? Could it be plasma? What if the spirals were all this and more? The 3 rays of light are talking about the 3 ways of receiving energy, wisdom, inspiration. This is important because the main form of life energy, Nufra, is incorporated into the whole of their philosophy. The 3 rays of light are invoking and evoking this energy, this force, and the two together make the triband. The description of this function is reminiscent of the descriptions of electron avalanching. That's just one of the functions that can be described by this relative notion. On the solar quarters, when the sun shines from the eastern horizon, shadows are cast on the ground, southwest at midwinter, northeast at midsummer, and due east at spring and fall, just as Turler described. As previously stated, the Druids have elemental tables for 3, 4, and 5 elements. For the 3-element path, there are the Nufra, the source of light and consciousness, the Guyar, the source of change, motion, and growth, and the kalas, the force of form, differentiation, manifestation, and stability. These convert into the modern understanding respectively as energy, liquid, and solid. Each has its own moon phase and season associated with it. Nufra is the full moon and summer. Guyar is the half moon, the spring and fall. And Kalas is the new moon and winter. And these cycles are known to be affiliated with the three rays of light. I will touch on these converging ideas to say a few quick words about the assignments of the lunar seasons. The Druids are correct to associate the new moon with winter and the full moon to summer. It does seem counterintuitive when visualizing the path of the body and the duration of the time it takes for it to transit said path, but the path isn't the reason for the association. It's the energetic function of the body and its effect on the planet. During the new moon cycle, no solar energy is reflected via the moon. The main types of growth happening within the plant structures are underground. We focus on planting seeds and the patience of sleeping process that happen in the dark, like root growth and healing. The winter is dark. The whole of the season is seen as the dark growth phase. During the full moon, when the solar energy is reflected back from the full face of the moon, we focus on above ground happenings within the plant structure, including pruning of upward shoots. Harvesting is best at the peak of the full moon, when the water within the plant has pulled the maximum amount of essence, flavonoid, terpenes, nutrients, etc. So the full moon is associated with summer, since this is the light growth phase of the year. These specific connotations to the moon cycle are profound for other reasons as well. During the new moon phase, the moon is always in the upstream portion of the Earth's magnetosphere, facing the sun. During the full moon, the moon is always in the downstream portion in the tail of the magnetosphere. At the first quarter, it is to the dusk side of Earth. At last quarter, the moon faces the dawn side of the magnetosphere. Hold that thought. There are 3 types of Nufra. These types of energy are what we know today as EMF, electromagnetic frequency currents. They have Druidic designations to some of the currents we call space weather. There is the Aud, from the sun, the solar currents. These are the strongest at dawn and noon. They always move downward. This is Druidry, not science. It's so compelling. And then there's the Ab, from the earth, the telluric cycles. They follow complex cycles and are shaped by the lunar cycle, planetary cycle, and seasonal changes, and the subtle interplay between the ground water with stone and soil. How could they know that? These currents always move upward. Then, lastly, there is the Aur from the moon. It depends on the two primary currents, the solar and telluric, and is created out of the fusion of the two. The Aub is represented by an upward-facing triangle, the symbol for fire, since these currents come from the fire of the earth. The Aud is represented by a circle for the round disk of the sun, and the Aur is represented by the crescent moon shape, which is used to depict the moon symbolically. When stacked, they represent the Grail. From their interplay unfolds the organic pattern of the Druid cosmos. John Michael Greer, The Druidry Handbook. Some visionary scholars describe a time in antiquity when the power of the 3 currents were mastered by the sages. As Greer puts it, an age long gone, when the telluric currents flowed through lines traced on the landscape to sacred hills, then leaped down and prepared channels to stone circles nearby where it fused with the solar current and sent the sacred fire of the lunar current surging outward. Even Greer believes he is speaking in a metaphor for looking at our past, present, and future, and that may be partially true. What else is true? What if we take this literally? I'm going to take this more sage advice and say that if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And I'm going to say this is not a metaphor. Though I'm not a duck, at this point you might be thinking I'm a quack, but let's not let our feathers get ruffled quite yet. What if the spiral patterns like the Ogham had more than 5 meanings? Are there rules of scaling applicable to the spirals? The ancients were extremely efficient in their recording of pretty much everything. It takes a lot of muscle to move these into place. And these cumbersome stones. I mean, have you ever tried to carve a stone? I have. It's difficult with modern carving tools. I'm sure that the people making these creations were trying to maximize the message while minimizing the work. So many things can and should be interpreted from the marks they left. What is it we are looking at? How should we be reading this? So when we take all of those things into account and we look at this church again, and when we think about St. Patrick and how he went and lived with the Druids and was taught their ways, and then went back to Glastonbury and stood on top of the hill, right? What was it there for? How did an earthquake of such magnitude that was big enough to destroy buildings on top of it occur? Were they playing with these currents? Were they playing with these motions? That's my question to you. And were those the snakes that St. Patrick chased out of Ireland? Did he know to put them in the water because that would neutralize them, right? So thanks for joining me today. I'm glad I got it figured out, straightened out a little bit. Here, I'll turn it back. Turn it back around. We're in the car still because it's so loud out there. And then I told you guys I was going to do one for the equinox. Remember everything that we just read, and the equinox is on the 20th and the new moon is on the 21st. So they're basically at the same time, which is a big deal. So I will see you back here then. And thanks for joining me, and happy St. Patrick's Day.